Mm.
So, and I remember doing this myself. I remember back in 2015 when I was over 300 pounds and I wanted to get a new job. I was tired of working where I was working. It was a Fortune 100 company, and I knew that they should have promoted me or given me different types of roles. And I felt like they just weren't seeing me or doing the things,
Right.
and weren't paying me the way they were paying others. And so I remember I wanted to look for a new position. And I remember saying to one of my friends who also worked there with me, I was like, but nobody's really going to hire me at this size. People don't really, they look at
Mm.
overweight people differently. So they're not going to hire me. And she was like, where did you get that shit from? she's like, that is no. She's like,
Mhm.
people hire fat people. I
Sure.
remember her saying that.
Hey, I'm Teen Zekas.
And hey, I'm Ilika Follette. We are business owners and moms with corporate backgrounds, and we are all about getting Black women paid in both corporate and business.
And you're listening to the Getting Black Women Paid podcast.
Let's go.
Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Getting Black Women Paid podcast. I am Teen Zekas, your pivot and pay strategist.
Hey, and I'm Ilika Follette, your business extraordinaire and strategist.
Absolutely. And today we are talking about weight, how weight impacts especially Black women in the workplace, Black women entrepreneurs, what stigmas are around weight, the messages that we are given, and how it impacts our careers. We've talked about the pay gap for women and for Black women especially, but there's also a pay gap for people who are overweight.
Yeah.
And that stuff is wild. So yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, and it's not talked about enough, right? Like they're like, no one is really saying, hey, the overweight woman over there, even though she's amazing, she's actually being paid much less than everyone else. Like no one
Yep.
speaks about it. And so it's unknown,
Yeah. And even when we say the term overweight, that term is based on white men, right? Like the BMI was data gathered on white men and then eventually white women. Like
Yep.
it's not, and so part of why Black women are typically considered overweight is because the standard does not include our bodies.
Exactly. And BMI, for those who don't know, BMI is body mass index. And usually when you go to the doctor or frankly, if you have to have surgery for something, if you have to have, like, there's so many different things, they're like, your BMI has to be under a certain level. And I remember one day I was talking to someone about BMI, and she had mentioned that according to BMI, and this was maybe 15 years ago, according to BMI, Serena Williams was overweight.
Yep.
Serena freaking Williams.
because muscle weighs more than fat. So the BMI is just a ratio of your weight and your height. And it does not take into account your muscle mass. It does not take into account, it is not an indicator of your health in any way.
At all.
And yes, and
hip to waist is a much better indicator, but
right.
I digress.
Well, when you talked about medical things, one thing is that, as a person who is considered overweight or even considered obese, my experience has been, I don't even want to bother going to the doctor because when I go for a sore throat or I go for whatever, the first thing they're going to tell me is you need to lose weight. Yeah. And I'm like, is that going to help my throat? Like, I don't, what are you talking about? Like, you just don't like, and they won't even take seriously the rest of our stuff or even test us for things. I think a lot of the, health concerns that people associate with being overweight, some of those things are exacerbated by people not getting the care they need because doctors are like, hey, you got to lose weight instead of let me actually test you for cancer or whatever it is.
Exactly. And it's so true. I'm so glad you mentioned that because for those who don't know about 8 years ago, I lost 120 pounds, and I did it naturally through, changing my eating to more so low carb, exercise, and lifestyle changes. And I still even talk about that on YouTube now on my YouTube channel. But the thing is, before that, I remember constantly. I remember when I wanted to have kids and I wasn't getting pregnant, or they were doing some tests to find out like what was going on with my body. It wasn't that I wasn't getting pregnant because I wasn't trying yet, but they were doing, for whatever reason, they decided to do some tests on me and found out, I had endometriosis and some other things. But before they did any tests, the first thing they said was, well, you got to lose weight. Your weight's going to impact you getting pregnant. And I remember being like, fat people get pregnant? Like, what is happening?
Right?
Why do you think that? How is that an indicator? It's because they put so many other things on weight, right? They sit there and they're like, oh, well, people have high blood pressure. Well, a lot of them have been overweight. So being overweight must cause high blood pressure. Right. And those things are actually like they've connected them, but not enough to actually study it to the point of saying, what is actually causing the high blood pressure? It's likely the food that we're eating, not the extra weight that's on you.
Right. And, there are statistics that people like to throw around about like how many deaths are caused by obesity. And those numbers are basically like, if you are fat and you die, we're going to call that an obesity death, even though that isn't what caused it. Right. Like, and so it's just
exactly. Like that person had cancer. Oh, well.
Right. And then there's also the possibility, you have an amazing journey of weight loss and keeping the weight off. And for a lot of us, when we lose weight, we gain back even more. And then we try to lose weight again, and then we gain back even more. Yeah. And there are some indicators that it's possible some of these health factors are associated with yo-yoing weight as opposed to having to do with being overweight at all. Exactly. And so then it's, so what are we even talking about? We already... Right. We already got off track. Like we're just dove into it. I wonder.
Off track. But it makes sense because this is the thing that that especially women are going through mentally. Yes. As we're going to work, as we're living our lives, running our businesses. Weight plays a huge part for us. We're constantly thinking about it, especially every time we go to the doctors, they're talking about it. Especially since every time someone has. A friend finds out they have high blood pressure. Now it's like, ooh, I got 20 pounds to lose, or I've got 50 pounds to lose. So it's probably going to come on me next. Like it's all these things that are constantly piled on for weight. And then of course you go into work, and though you may be the best at what you do, you're being discriminated against because your weight.
And I mean, even just talking about like buying clothes that fit properly, right? Like there was I think she was an elementary school teacher who just had a very curvy body.
Oh, I remember that.
And she just had a picture or something was taken of her like doing an incredible educational lesson. And she was wearing some like jeans that fit her well. And people were like, this is inappropriate. You should be doing porn instead of teaching and all this stuff. And it's like, what? She was not wearing anything inappropriate, but people saw her Black body that was shaped like a Black woman's body. Yep. And all they could think about was sexualizing her. And, and so it's like, how do you buy clothes that are like, quote unquote, appropriate or professional that fit our bodies where people aren't going to have all these extra judgments on it because we have more curves than the white lady standing next to us.
Exactly. It's the curves in the body. And then it comes with, many times it's like either in order to cover those curves, now you're wearing clothes that are way too big and it looks sloppy.
Right. Right. We got this frumpy look. Right. When I was teaching high school, I was at an all boys high school. And I'm like, what kind of clothes can I wear so that when I'm leaning over the student's desk, he doesn't think about the triple D's in his face? Like I can't.
Exactly.
I was wearing the frumpiest, baggiest stuff. And and then that has other connotations that you're sloppy, you're not put together.
Exactly.
And so it's a double-edged sword. There's no right way to do it.
Exactly. And then you're lazy. I remember that came up, quite a few times for people. And I often wonder two sides of it. One side is, people are looking at you a certain way because of the way you're dressed, because of your size, and they're assuming that you're lazy, even though they see the results that you're bringing to the table with everything you're doing, whether you're in business, you have your own business, or you're in corporate, right? They
Right.
see the results, but yet they're still assuming lazy because they're like, if you can't take care of you, how can you take care of this?
Right. And
You
fat
know?
and our culture of fat phobia tells us that if someone has a bigger body, they earned that body through laziness. They are not taking care of themselves. They don't know how to follow through on things, right? And then all of these biases come into the way that they're judging that person's performance at their job. That has
Exactly.
nothing to do with any of those things. And on top of that, none of those things are actually true about people's bodies, right?
Right.
So,
Mhm. Absolutely. I mean, and it's the other thing is, I thought about this a few years ago as I was going through the process. I used to be a weight loss and wellness coach, so I'd help women like lose weight and feel better and have more energy and all those things, right? I did that. That was the first business that I'd ever started, right? Well, other than like MLM stuff, so but it
yeah.
was the first actual business that I started, and so selling knives in college for for
Right,
whatever
right.
it
Everybody's
was.
had that knife
Right,
presentation. I'm like, I don't think
exactly,
I have a knife that could cut a penny."
exactly. But the weight loss and wellness was the first one that I started, and I remember when I started the business, um, I would have clients who would lose weight, right? Let's say they lost 80 pounds, 100 pounds, 50 pounds, whatever it was, and then all of a sudden start getting promotions at work,
Mm,
start getting opportunities and doors begin opening for them for other positions and things like that. And at first I was like, oh, it's because they didn't care about these people until they lost the weight and da da da. And then I realized that there's also some of us holding ourselves back because of the weight.
mm,
So, and I remember doing this myself. I remember back in 2015 when I was over 300 pounds and I wanted to get a new job. I was tired of working where I was working. It was a Fortune 100 company, and I knew that they should have promoted me or given me different types of roles. And I felt like they just weren't seeing me or doing the things,
right.
and weren't paying me the way they were paying others. And so I remember I wanted to look for a new position, and I remember saying to one of my friends who also worked there with me, I was like, "But nobody's really going to hire me at this size. People don't really, they look at
Mm,
overweight people differently, so they're not going to hire me." And she was like, "Where did you get that shit from?" she's like, "That is no." She's like,
mhm.
"People hire fat people." I
Sure.
remember her saying that, but I remember her saying that specifically, and I thought, you know what? That's true. So I went into that interview much differently than I would have, thinking they aren't going to hire me because I'm fat. And
Right.
when I went into the interview, I went in with confidence, and here's the things that I know how to do, and I'm amazing at this, and here's the results I've created
Mhm.
for this Fortune 100 company. Here's the money I've saved them. Here's the money I made them. All these things,
Right.
and I was hired like immediately.
Right. And some people won't be able to go into the room with that confidence until they
Mhm.
have started to lose the weight.
Yep.
And so maybe what you were seeing with your clients in part was their
Mhm.
confidence increasing
Exactly.
and then people responding to that.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's so hard to, I mean, obviously we can't associate like one thing with the cause of the other.
Right.
But one reason I've really been looking forward to this episode and talking with you is because you and I have so very different perspectives on weight loss.
Yeah.
Like since the day I met you, I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I could tell her my my thoughts about weight," because
You can
I
tell
have.
me anything. You know that. I
Oh,
don't
I
care.
know. I'm just saying, like
Now you know.
back before I knew. Yes. But so for me, like my perspective, I am very, very much against, at least for myself, intentionally losing weight for any
Mhm.
reason. And I read this book. Maybe I'll find the title of it. It was anti-diet, but I don't remember like what the
Mhm.
subtitle was. But it was about diet culture and like the messages we're given all the time, and um, about what our bodies are designed to do. And part of the reasons why so many of us gain back all the weight because our body is like, oh, I was just starved. I better retain all this stuff and what have
Mhm.
you. And so, um, to my mind, I think that I would absolutely not weigh as much as I do now if I hadn't been told all my life to try to lose weight.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so, like, so it's just complicated to
Mhm.
try to fight the fat phobic society we have while living in a larger body, and then thinking, okay, so um, where do I now draw the confidence for myself to to live well, right? And for me, it's okay, so how do I make sure I can move my body in ways where I can play with my kids and I can climb the stairs when I need to? And, those are the things that are my goals, as opposed to like, I want to make the number on the scale,
Right.
say a lower thing, right?
Yeah.
But so many of us have been giving the messages for our whole lives that like your life will be better when you're smaller.
Yeah.
And for those of us who have lost weight, we've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think about how differently people treated me when I'd lost weight, and how frustrating it was to know like, well, when I gain it back, people are gonna go right back to treating me how they were, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just this very messy, complicated topic. And what I love about you and me is that we can have our very different views of it, but neither of us is pushing those views on everybody else. Like the thing I can't stand are the people who are going to be like there's a woman I follow, her name's Aubrey Gordon, and she had started out under the name Your Fat Friend.
Wow.
And she had told a story about like a woman just came up to her at a grocery store and took a melon out of her cart and said, "That's too much sugar for you." Like, who are these people talking about? Like that to me is just like so over the top wild. But so like what I love is that we're able to come to these discussions with our opinions about, what we want to do for ourselves and what will help other people do when they come to us, without like, well, I'm just going to approach every person I know or don't know and be like, I've diagnosed you as having health problems because of your size, when I don't know anything about you. Like for me, it's wild how many times I've been at a doctor's office complimented on my blood pressure.
Yes.
Which is not a thing. People don't get complimented on their blood pressure. But when I get my blood pressure taken and they're like, "Oh, you have great blood pressure," because they're shocked because they were assuming I was going to come in there. Like how many times a doctor has just assumed I have diabetes?
Assumed, yes.
And I'm like, no, I actually have very good health indicators, except for my BMI, which is,
it's so funny that you brought that up. What you talked about when you started was how being told that you were fat, or overweight, or you need to lose weight is what caused you to have some issues. I firmly believe that because that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
I was put on my first diet when I was 8 years old. If you look at a picture of me when I was 8, I looked like an 8-year-old, but I was too tall. So I don't want to say too tall, but I was tall. I was 8 years old and I was 5 feet tall and I was 135 pounds.
And you were 5 feet tall at 8 years old. Wow. Wow.
So when you think about it, the doctors, of course, they're just looking at an 8-year-old who's 135 pounds, not considering the fact that I was 5 feet tall. So it wasn't like I had this massive stomach or legs or arms or anything like that.
Right.
So I even have a picture of when I was 8 and I literally looked like an 8-year-old. And then I was put on that diet because I weighed the same as my mom. So it was like,
right. But you were probably almost as tall as her too.
I was
right.
tall, but she was 5'4" or 5'5", let her tell it. And I was 5 feet and we weighed the same, right? So in their minds, I needed to lose weight.
Right.
She was great, in great shape, all those things, but because I was 8, not paying attention to my height. So when I got put on that diet, you can literally see me 8 years old looking like a regular kid. And then by 10 years old, I was actually overweight. By 10 years old, I was closing in on 200 pounds.
Right.
And it was because I was being forced to eat certain things and then like sneaking, or when I get to like my grandmother's house, I'm getting all the other stuff because I don't get to eat that, and then everything's always focused on my weight, every conversation, everything I did. And so it was always that. And that type of stuff does make you gain weight.
Right. Well, and when we diet, gosh, especially at such a young age, we train ourselves not to listen to our body's cues, right? Like if you've been on diets your whole life, you don't even know what hunger cues are. So just like eating naturally just doesn't come naturally to someone who has been training themselves to ignore all those cues.
But the thing is, though, we have been taught to ignore the cues since we were born.
Oh yeah, this is the time you eat. This is
exactly. Yeah. No one understands their hunger cues.
That's true. That's true.
But you've been taught to eat less. You've been taught that you're supposed to be hungry, that you're not supposed to. that, that you can't eat this and you can't do this and you can't do that. And so all of that. So, and when something is off limits, you know what that means. You
You
want
want
it
it even more.
more, right?
Yes.
That's why people lose weight and gain weight, because if I like, for me, when I did keto, right? I remember I would share with people how to get off of keto properly, because if you just stop that
Right,
the
just flip a
day,
switch.
right, the day you hit your numbers, you're like, okay, time for Cold Stone and Pizza Hut. If you do that, what happens is the weight is gonna pile right on. So what you have to do is you have to be smart about it, and you have to transition yourself. It's like, and I would say like a 6-week transition type situation. Like, you got to transition.
Right, you gotta
Your body-
train your body on how to
Exactly.
take in those nutrients differently than what it's used to. Yeah.
Exactly. And train your brain on not jumping right into the thing that you couldn't have for
Right,
so.
I've been deprived for 6
Mhm.
months.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna eat a whole pizza or whatever. Yeah, right.
That's what I'm telling you. I'm telling you, it jumps right to it. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like understanding that stuff and how it's affecting you. And I think that's what most people don't do. And that's why diet culture has been such a bad thing for us. And I think that we as a society need to find in between, some sort of compromise of, hey, are you healthy? Are you eating healthy? Do you
Mhm.
feel good? Do you feel strong? Are you always sick, or do you feel well?
Right.
And then guess what? That has nothing to do with whether you are, 120 pounds or 500 pounds. Well, 500, I don't know. I doubt they feel well because their knees are probably not able to manage it. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
Right, but there's a wide range of healthy bodies
right,
that have
exactly.
different weights. And I wonder if, for us, like, we've started to use this language, but it's just been ta like, plastered over what we were doing before, right? So they're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, this isn't a diet, this is a lifestyle." But it's still a diet, like, and then so, like, there's a lot of these places kind of trying to start using those words about wellness when they really mean weight loss. And
Mhm.
so, like, to your point, like, we want to, like, actually be living into, right, how do you feel? How well
Mhm.
are you? As opposed to, let's just use the word wellness when we actually mean weight loss
Right.
and then just
Right.
paint our diet.
And stop tying our beliefs, emotions, feelings, like confidence and everything to that number on the scale. Because guess what?
Mhm.
The number that was on the scale when you were 22 is not the number that's on the scale when you were 42, right? These are going to be two different numbers
Mhm.
because your body manages weight differently. It holds weight differently. You might even look healthy. You might even be really, really fit, but you're not going to be the 120 that you were when you were 22 or whatever. Then I wasn't 120 when I was 22.
Right.
Whoever was,
Yeah.
it's not how our body works. It's not how our bodies were meant to work, especially as women. So
Mhm.
it's like letting go of the number on the scale and being more, I don't want to say concerned, but more passionate, I guess, about like the muscle to fat ratios, right? The amount of muscle you have
Mhm.
in your body, the hip to waist ratios, and your actual numbers, like
Mhm.
looking at your blood pressure, your glucose levels, your cholesterol levels, like looking at these
Mhm.
numbers, looking at how you feel. Do your knees hurt? If your knees hurt, guess what? It may not just be weight. It could be that you're eating something that does not align with your body. So
Mhm.
for me, if I eat sugar, my knees hurt. I already know. I know that, oh my goodness, my knees hurt. Did I have some sugar? Like, that's
Mhm.
what I
Right.
know.
And it also could be that you are not training those muscles, through movement,
Hmm.
right? That
Right.
maybe it is you need to be moving differently or moving more to alleviate that pain or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I
But
wonder,
a lot of it is food though, because the thing is we have
yes.
food, and I don't mean like bad food, good food. I mean like food intolerances.
Sure.
So,
Right.
yeah,
Something that gets you inflamed when you eat it. And
right.
now, right. And now
Like
you have
pineapple for
food.
someone, right? I remember I had a
Mhm.
client years ago, and it was pineapples. She ate pineapples every day, and she was like, "I don't know why I can't like look like get this weight off, and my knees keep hurting, and all
Right.
these
And that's
things."
not because pineapples are bad food, but,
Right?
like, for her, her
Right.
body reacts to it. So,
Exactly.
yes. Well, and I wonder if we can tie this into, right, we're getting Black women paid, right? So I
Right.
wanna tie it back into, how we think about weight in terms of how we show up at work
Hmm.
and, sort of fighting against
Yeah.
those biases that limit us in the workplace. So I'm wondering, I guess what advice you have for, people who are watching this or who are listening in
Right.
terms of how to approach their work when it comes to their weight?
I think it's a couple of things. I think it's and my younger sister said this to me one day. She's like a lot of times when people either gain weight or lose weight, they aren't necessarily dressing for their body. Number one, they've already
Mhm.
attached the confidence to their weight, right?
Mhm.
And when you attach the confidence to your weight, then it's always gonna waver, right? You're gonna
Mhm.
be really confident when you're this size and not as confident when you're this size, whatever that size is for you. And so release that. Confidence and weight have nothing to do with each other. That's number one.
Mm.
Number two, dress for the body that you have now, not the body that you used to have or the one that you want. You know? So
Mhm.
what that means is like if you are, let's say you've lost weight, dress for this new body. Don't be like I was wearing way too big clothes, not realizing, right?
Yeah.
Being weird and ridiculous. Or where you've gained weight and you're trying to fit into the clothes that no longer fit. And then because when you're wearing clothes that don't fit you because you've lost or gained weight,
Mhm.
the confidence goes with that when you think about it. Because
Right.
you don't feel comfortable or feel right in that outfit. And so now you're like, ooh, and you're thinking people are looking at you and they
Right.
probably are because
I'm remembering times where I was, just always adjusting stuff and trying to
Mhm.
put, because it doesn't fit right.
Yeah.
And it's like now I'm focused on that instead of, you
Instead of the
know,
thing that you're supposed to be doing, right? Or instead of
yeah.
standing in your, standing in your power or standing in your dominance, standing up and
Mhm.
speaking or whatever it is that you're doing, you're so focused on what you look like in that moment, it takes away from the message or from the results that you're trying to get.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Dress for your body now. And you can also change the other things about how you look. Like we were talking before we got on, Ailika, you're rocking some braids. I think they're beautiful. I got my hair cut. I got buzzed on the
Right.
sides. I got some new earrings, right? Like you can look cute
Mhm.
at
Exactly.
any size. Right?
Exactly.
So, whatever it is to give you the confidence when you walk into the room and say
Mhm.
like, I know I'm looking cute. I know I'm feeling cute, and here's all the stuff I'm bringing to the table for this
Right.
company.
Exactly. Because that's the thing, right? The conversation at no point should even be about what you look like. It should
Right.
be about what you're bringing to the table. Can
Right, and
you
so right, so it's not
walk
even
in
about,
that confidence?
looking cute, but it's about, like, I'm not gonna be thinking about how I look
Right,
because I already
exactly.
know I'm set.
Because when you walk in with that confidence, that's why I'm like, get that confidence away from the number on the scale, right?
Mhm.
Because when you walk in with that confidence of, I can do this role, I know exactly how to do X, Y, and Z, and I've done it at these three companies. Check my resume, go check my what are those things called when you call
Oh,
people?
references.
References. Check my references.
It's been so long since you've applied for a job. I love it.
When you call people. What are those things called when you call people?
Oh my goodness. Oh, girl, I love it. But I think that's a great place to end it, in terms of what we want you to take away from this episode is
Mhm,
that there are all kinds of views you can have about weight, about your own weight, what you want or don't want to do about your weight, and all
mhm,
of that can be separate from the confidence you bring to the table in your work. And that if you are dressing for your body and feeling comfortable in your skin, feeling comfortable in your clothes, then you can deliver the other stuff, and then the weight part just melts away.
mhm. Absolutely.
Mm. Well, thank you all so much for joining us, and we can't wait to see you in the next one.
Yep. See you guys soon.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Getting Black Women Paid podcast. If you want to hear more episodes like this one, subscribe wherever you're listening now.
And if you loved what you heard, be sure to leave us a review. And make sure you share the podcast with incredible Black women in your life so we can continue getting Black women paid.
All right, we'll see you in the next one.